So Bitcoin's been really exploding lately. It's all over the news. My mom's talking about it. My aunt's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. Um, it basically exploded from, back in around 2008, a relatively underground phenomenon to something that's quite mainstream now. So it's reasonable to ask, is this a boom or is it a bubble? And so I figured I'd chime in on that, contribute my thoughts because I've been hearing a lot of speculation about it, a lot of people contributing their opinions. So why not mine? Um, if you want to skip the rest of this tutorial, if your attention span is that short, basically the gist of it is I do not think that Bitcoin is in bubble territory yet. I think what we're seeing is a reasonable retracement. Once we hit, for Bitcoin, about 10,000, and for Ethereum, about 1,000, and Litecoin, $100, then we could start talking about bubble territory. But for now, I just don't think so. So, in case you didn't know, I teach technical analysis at IOTAF up in Montreal. I'm not a specialist in blockchain, but I can at least contribute some of my knowledge as a trader to the subject. So let's get started. Here you see I've drawn the Fibonacci levels for Bitcoin, and basically just anchored them at relative highs and lows. There's some contention on, well, what exactly do I use? Do I use the wick or do I use significant levels? I just like to use where the heads and tails of the candles meet. It just works a little better for me, but of course, Fibonacci levels are more of an art than a science, so by all means use whatever technique you find best. But you see that there's relatively good agreement here with not only the peaks and valleys, the highs and lows, but also the levels of consolidation. So you see that there's this, at the far right of the chart, there's this, big dip, and then some consolidation. And that's what everybody's been worried about, right? Is this the end of the world? Is this a bubble popping? What is it? Well, if you look at the date on this chart, it's actually late 2016, early 2017. So if we actually expand this chart, we see that Bitcoin, after some consolidation, really took off to even more crazy heights, right? I have that little trend line drawn, and it just completely shattered that level. So if we redraw our Fibonacci levels, we might be able to gain some insight into what's going on now. So let's just choose this little relative low here. Let's see, do we see some agreement? Looks okay. Let's try the relative low before that right here. That's a little better. We see the peaks and valleys agreeing a little bit, and we see some consolidation at about the 786 level. Of course, there is some wick action going on there, but that could be due to just volatility or randomness in the markets, whatever. The point is that we see that consolidation at a fairly high, one of the upper Fibonacci levels. If it was down around the 50 level, we'd have problems. So let's take a look at Ethereum. And I already have these drawn, and we see the same thing. Now we see a little bit more pronounced dip. However, we're not quite at the 50 level yet. We're at the 618 level, which is still in quote-unquote reasonable territory. So if you look at this chart, it just really exploded, right? Extreme exponential growth. So obviously, with a growth that big, you can expect a little bit of a dip. Moving on to Litecoin. Litecoin's a little messier. I really tried to work with the Fibonacci's here, and it's okay. It doesn't have that nice exponential growth pattern that we see in Bitcoin or in Ethereum. But I can still work with this a little bit to figure out get the Fibonacci's relatively in agreement, and I see that still. Not only am I hanging out around the 786 level, maybe teetering above the 618 level, but I still see the higher highs and higher lows, which is pretty much the confirmation that we're still in an uptrend. The moment that is broken, I can anticipate maybe a little head and shoulders pattern forming or something like that. That's about all. If you're interested in learning more about technical analysis or trading, please check us out at IOTAF. Otherwise, thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe.